My family was once seen as the ideal: a big household, successful children, parents who loved us equally and fairly. But in that very same family, I witnessed something no one should ever have to see: a mother who pushed her own son, at just 16 years old, to choose death because it felt like the only way out of the suffocating control she wrapped around his life. And when my sister, his mother, asked me, why would he say he doesn't care whether I live or die? I simply replied, what else did you expect? Now everyone turns on me, calling me heartless, cold blooded. But if you truly knew what that boy went through, if you heard the full story I'm about to tell, maybe then you'd realize some truths are too cruel to still be called family. We're a family of 5 siblings, including 2 sets of twins. Our parents came from a childhood marked by pain and emotional neglect, so they made it their mission not to repeat that with us. They never imposed expectations like, you have to be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, or top of your class. Instead, they encouraged us to explore who we were and chase what made us happy. To them, success wasn't about awards or wealth. It was about living a fulfilled life with no regrets. And that, I believe, gave birth to a generation of children who grew up complete in both material and emotional ways. We didn't fight for attention. We weren't forced into a mold. One of us became a doctor like me, another a teacher, another opened a small cafe and chose a quiet life. And all of it was okay. We knew how to stand on our own feet, not because of pressure from our parents, but because we understood who we were. All of us, except one. My oldest sister. She was a twin, but her twin sibling died in the womb. Maybe that's why she always felt like she had to carry the weight of the one who never made it. She was brilliant, self-disciplined, driven, and always felt different from the rest of us. While kids like me were still playing with dolls, she was reading law books. When I was struggling through ninth grade math, she was already winning scholarships for international summer programs. But the one thing she never had, and maybe never will, is peace of mind. She didn't crave love from our parents. She craved validation. But in a home where validation wasn't measured by achievements, she always felt unseen. She once said to us outright, Mom and Dad are too soft. They think giving kids freedom is good parenting, but really it's laziness. They're raising a generation of mediocrity and calling it happiness. She's the most successful among us, a well-known attorney married to a top surgeon, but she's also the most distant. The moment she graduated, she left. No family gatherings, no real conversations, just distance, and a judgmental look every time she visits, as if silently evaluating which one of us is living the least impressive life. She once told me something I've never forgotten. You can be free, but don't mistake freedom as an excuse to stop striving. Mice. Sounds profound, doesn't it? But if you lived in our family, you'd know what she really meant. You're lazy, you're weak, and you deserve to be left behind. And then she had a child. A baby who, even before being conceived, was chosen through IVF, planned and slotted like a final puzzle piece in her perfect master plan. I remember thinking, she's going to use this child to do what she believes our parents failed to do with her. And that's exactly what happened. Her son, my nephew, was not born to live an ordinary life. He was born to win. And now, a new story begins. The story of a child programmed like a project, and of a mother who cannot tolerate even the slightest deviation from the blueprint. But you know what, boss? The line between expectation and control is only one moment away. One moment when a child cries and no one stops to ask, are you okay? My nephew, the child who was planned even before he existed, didn't enter this world to unconditional love, but rather to a detailed roadmap with milestones laid out like clockwork. Even while he was still in the womb, My sister read dozens of books about stimulating fetal brain development. From Mozart to classical literature, prenatal education for her was a serious project, devoid of excess emotion. By the time the boy was born, his schedule was already printed, framed, and hung on the wall like an unbreakable directive. By age 2, he had to know the alphabet. By 3, he was expected to recognize numbers. At 4, he was enrolled in piano, not for fun, but to develop discipline. From 5 onward, every afternoon was packed with tutors, aptitude assessments, and standardized test drills. He grew up with virtually no free time. My sister wouldn't let him play with the neighborhood kids because, in her words, they're not on the same intellectual level. Even play had to have a goal: building blocks to train the left brain, chess for strategic thinking, and only science documentaries allowed for screen time. Strangely, he never cried, never acted out like other kids. My nephew was an obedient child, in the most literal sense. Every time he was forced to study, scolded, or made to repeat a piece of music dozens of times, he simply followed orders. No rebellion, no tears, no, I don't want to. Just silence, as if he were quietly waiting for someone to notice that something wasn't right. The only time he resembled a real child was Saturday afternoons, when he was allowed to visit our parents' house, where we, his uncles and aunts, had no curriculum, no tests, and no metrics. During those visits, he lit up. He ran, he laughed out loud, he ate sweets without being forced to calculate sugar intake. Once, I even caught him lying in the yard, eyes staring up at the sky, like it was his first time breathing. I once asked my sister, "Don't you see how happy he is when he's here?" She just gave a cold smile and said, "Happiness won't make him successful. Children are meant to be shaped, not spoiled. But a child can't live like a robot forever." By 8th grade, my nephew began suffering from unexplained headaches, insomnia, and hair loss. The doctor suggested it might be stress related, but my sister said, "Kids these days are just weak. He needs to be pushed harder." The boy started withdrawing. He laughed less, spoke less, and the look in his eyes grew more and more hollow. I remember one weekend he stayed over at my house. During dinner, he suddenly asked me, if someone no longer existed, would the people around them feel relieved? I froze. That night, I held him tight as he fell asleep. But the next morning, he had to go back to that ironclad schedule, as if nothing had happened. It was the first time I ever saw him cry without making a sound. And that's when I began to realize my sister hadn't just programmed her son's path to success. She had unknowingly programmed an entire life with no escape route. And in that life, silence was his only cry for help. I used to believe that if a child was good enough, tried hard enough, stayed quiet, and endured, then the world would be a little kinder to them. But I was wrong. After the day my nephew asked me about disappearing, I began to see him differently. He was no longer just the gifted kid from a family of lawyers and doctors. He was a child trapped in a cage set up by his own mother. I tried talking to my parents, to our siblings, and even gently brought it up with my sister. But every time I got the same responses. "You're overthinking it. He's doing fine in school. All smart kids get stressed, don't they?" No one listened. No one saw it. Not even his father, a doctor too busy with surgeries and emergencies to notice his own son slipping away. And then, the unthinkable happened. My nephew was 16. One afternoon, while at the hospital where his father worked, he quietly took a large quantity of sedatives from the nurse's station. He then walked into a restroom on the 4th floor and swallowed all of it. If a nurse hadn't randomly needed that restroom at the time, he probably wouldn't be here today. I'll never forget the moment I got the call. Not because I was shocked, but because it should never have happened. This was a good kid, never rebellious, never smoked, never skipped school, and, and yet he chose to leave the world just as quietly as he had always lived in it. My sister didn't cry. As the rest of us panicked, she said only one thing: "He's weaker than I thought." No tears, no hug, just steel in her eyes and the cold expression of someone whose son had failed at being a project. During the temporary custody hearing that followed, my sister even said this to the judge: "I don't care about his feelings. He's still alive, and he needs to toughen up. That's life. Whether you fall or not, that's the weak one's problem." The courtroom went silent. All you could hear was the judge tapping his pen before he spoke words that shook our entire family. "You may be a great lawyer, I'll give you that, but you are a terrible mother, and if it were up to me, I'd bar you from contacting your son for at least the next few years." That moment snapped my brother-in-law, her husband, out of it. Maybe for the first time, he truly saw the horror his son had lived through. He filed for divorce that very week, stepped away from the high-achieving madness, and admitted their son into a residential therapy program. My nephew spent 5 months in a psychological treatment center, followed by 3 months in a teen recovery group, a place where, for the first time, he was allowed to just be a kid. No homework, no pressure, just other kids who had also broken down and were learning to rise again. When he was finally allowed to choose where he wanted to live, he chose me. Maybe because I was the only one who ever listened, or maybe simply because my house had a real roof, one he could breathe under without asking permission. And the strangest thing is, for the first time in years, I saw him smile. A real smile, not forced, not hiding, just a child, slowly coming back to life from the wreckage of expectations. My nephew lived with my husband and me for nearly a year after everything fell apart. Day by day, I watched a boy who had once hit rock bottom slowly learn how to exist again. From sleeping through the night without a nightmare to eating a meal without obsessing over the calorie count. From taking a walk without asking permission to laughing, genuinely laughing, at a silly video online. He gradually learned how to live like a real child, something that should have been a basic right, not a privilege. His father, my sister's ex-husband, changed too. After years of silence, buried in the hospital shifts and professional prestige, he finally realized how absent he had been from his own son's pain. He started showing up for family therapy, even took an extended leave from work to be present for his boy. On the rare occasions we spoke, he once told me, "I used to think being a great doctor was enough, but being a father is harder than anything I've ever done." Together, father and son began to heal, step by step. No fanfare, no big declarations, just patience and sincerity. And then last summer, my nephew made the decision to move back in with his dad. I wasn't sad, I was proud, because it meant he was strong enough to choose his next chapter, no longer needing our home as a shelter. That broken boy is now a thoughtful young man. And then he did something none of us expected. He applied to medical school. "I want to understand why someone can fall the way I did," he said, "and if there's a way to stop others from falling like that." That sentence brought tears to my eyes. Not because of the career path he chose, but because of why he chose it. Not to prove something, but to heal. Just when life seemed to be settling, my sister came back. A minor stroke, a TUA, forced her to pause, to look back. Or at least it slowed her down long enough to realize just how alone she'd become. The only one in the family who still kept in touch with her was my twin brother, always the neutral one, though his heart was scarred too. He told me she'd started admitting some of her faults, that she felt empty and exhausted. Last week, she tried reaching out to her son. Not to apologize, just to talk. His response left the entire family speechless. "I don't care if she lives or dies. She broke down, called me, her voice trembling. Does he really hate me that much? I didn't have to think. I didn't plan to comfort her either. What did you expect? I said, and hung up. Now the whole family's turning on me, calling me heartless, saying I should help her, soften, heal the wound. But they've all forgotten one thing. I didn't create that wound. I'm just the one who stayed beside the child when he collapsed and waited patiently until he could stand again. My sister, who once thought she was untouchable, now knows that no one survives their own coldness unscathed. And my nephew? He keeps moving forward, step by step, not to get revenge, but to live in a way that honors the second chance he was given. After that brief phone call with me, my sister went completely silent. She stopped trying to reach out to her son. No more messages to any family members, just one final announcement. She would be transferring her job and leaving the city next Monday. Though she said it was too painful to bear, I knew, and the whole family quietly understood, that she wasn't leaving to escape her son. She was leaving because, at last, she had realized staying here would only ever make her the abandoned mother. My twin brother, the only one still in touch with her, told us she was packing up, cutting ties with nearly all of her work circles, and truly seemed ready to start over somewhere new. Somewhere no one knew about her once perfect life that had fallen apart. And then something happened that none of us saw coming. My nephew said he wanted to see his mother one last time. Not to forgive, not out of longing, but in his words, I just want to look her in the eyes one last time to make sure there's nothing left unresolved. The meeting was arranged at my uncle's house, a neutral place belonging to no one. I wasn't there that day, but my brother told me everything. And it's played in my mind over and over like a scene from a heartbreaking movie. My sister arrived first, wearing a simple office dress, no makeup, no perfume, none of the commanding presence of the lawyer who used to make people tremble in courtrooms. She sat still, hands tightly clasped, staring into the distance, as if terrified her son's eyes would become her final sentence. Then my nephew walked in. No anger, no blame, no shouting. He just stood there, silently looking at the woman who gave him life. In a silence so heavy, it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. 1 minute, then 2. And finally he said, I didn't come to forgive you. I just came to say, you no longer have any power over me. My sister broke down. For the first time in years, she cried. Not as a tough mother. Not as a steel-hearted woman. Not as the famous lawyer. But as a mother who had lost her child while he was still alive. My nephew didn't wipe her tears. He didn't cry either. He bowed, turned his back, and walked away without looking back. That was the last time they ever saw each other. On Monday, she left the city. No one came to see her off. No one asked where she was going. To many in the family, that chapter was closed. To me, it felt like an ending with no victory, only losses too heavy to count. My sister now lives somewhere unfamiliar, carrying with her the shadow of a child who no longer belongs to her, and my nephew, now a medical student, is still on his healing journey, not to heal others, but to finally heal the forgotten child within himself. Our family used to be seen as the model, but I've come to understand being a model doesn't mean being perfect. Some cracks only show when the light goes out, and some wounds, even long after they've passed, still ache every time someone asks, how is she doing these days? I only answer quietly, she's not here anymore.